Just happened. Did you notice this last day? The stock market took a plunge, and yet Bitcoin not only did not move down with it, it went up. Are stocks and crypto finally decoupling? Well, US job numbers came in, and the number of unfilled open jobs came in 1.5 million higher than anticipated. Today, we have Paul joining us, and there's nobody better person to join us to take a look at the markets that impact crypto because Paul keeps track of pretty much all those different markets out there. And we're going to look at those. Then let's look deeper at Bitcoin and ETH, and then we'll dive into some of your crypto and altcoin picks. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. If you are looking for crypto news that doesn't have context, or you're looking for panic selling and FOMOing in, you'd be surprised how many places you can find that, but you won't find that here. If you, like me, came to crypto because you realized potential for life-changing gains over a 4 to 8 year period and are looking for discussions on becoming a solid and shakeable crypto investor, that's what you will find here. And you're in exactly the right place and the right family, the Rainmaker family. The reason I created this channel back in 2020 was because, well, I was new to crypto in 2017, 6 years ago. And back then I was looking for a crypto channel and a network or group that understood crypto as an investment and discussed the important things like investment cycles, projects, to filter out the 70% out there that is crap and look at the pros and cons of the remaining 30% and look at the risks and guesses at upside if it came together well. And I didn't find that. So we created it. And I say we because it's not just me anymore. It's a family of rainmakers. And you will see them here in the chat. You will see them come in our free Telegram group. The link to that is below. And you will definitely find them in our private Patreon group that allows you access to the Rainmaker private Discord. This is where the best discussion and the best info is. There are other benefits too, but you will have to join us to find out. Do know I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul invests in many markets. Crypto is just one of them. None of this to be taken as financial advice. Well, if you haven't already, do make it rain on that like button. Strap in for the show, and let's add Paul to the channel. Paul, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here as always. I'm expecting a lot of comments about how Michael Burry got it right and I got it wrong. So we shall see. We shall see. But he's looking good with his short position right now, although it wasn't looking particularly good before. But there's a few things to discuss in the markets, lots of really interesting stuff. And of greatest importance, what you said at the top of the show is crypto's been performing extremely well and looks like it is acting as a hedge against market volatility, which in itself is extremely interesting because most people say it's not a hedge against anything and it's going to zero and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you were watching the channel last year, you know that we were dealing with a pretty severe bear market, and that all came to a head with SBF, the nadir of that. And if you're watching the equity markets, you'll see that they were sort of going off at a tangent. Equities were going up, and the correlation between that and the crypto markets went the other way. Now, equities are very sensitive. US equities are particularly sensitive to interest rate cycles, and the market has been getting ahead of itself a little bit. I think rightly so, though, that in the sense that they're looking for the end of the US interest rate cycle. Sometimes, in order to affect that change, it starts to go down, which makes the authorities worry about a collapse, which makes them cut interest rates. So it becomes a kind of circular argument. But interest rates in the US have potentially peaked. But the biggest pressure of any economy I can see over the last few months has come on the US, because you've had inflation, you've had energy prices going up, and you've had a strong currency, a very strong currency. And so all of those things in the backdrop of that, crypto doing extremely well is very interesting indeed. And I think that sets us up for potentially the last quarter of this year being either a consolidation, or if it ends up being a positive, that's really good. If we can just hold in where we are now. But as we move into next year, and it could be quicker than that, the markets might even start to rally into the year end, and crypto could go with it. I mean, I think the two will go together rather than one moves against, they're inversely correlated. So I think everything will go up as we get towards the year end. And the big key of all of this is US interest rates staying stable, and then potentially going down. What you've seen in most other countries is they've said, oh, inflation's come down a little bit, so we're going to hold rates. And each currency's got smashed for that. And everyone's kind of looked to the US and said, well, you might still be raising interest rates, so we're going to keep buying dollars. But that's got to come to an end. And we've got non-farm payrolls on Friday, which is the big number. I don't know exactly what it will be, what the catalyst will be, but there will be one that will shake the market right up, whether it's a CPI number. I have to check when CPI comes out. Either be the US CPI or non-farms. And I think I'll show you some charts. I'll show you a chart that I'm looking at that looks a little bit at timing, and potentially the early part of October could be really interesting for a low. And what would normally happen is you would see this sort of panic. I mean, October time is classic. When the stock market crashed, 1987 was October, 1929 crash was October. So when October rolls around, everyone gets a bit nervous. What we're seeing, a massive amount of nervousness is going on. And so that's where we are now. So I think if you want, we could get into the charts and I'll show you what's happening there. But I think it's really very, very interesting market. Certainly very volatile, and it's fun for the short-term traders.
Yes, I want to say welcome to everyone. We are live, and the comments pouring in here. Suresh asking us to take a look at Spores Network. We'll probably be able to get to that. Nurse Cooper says, Rain fam, you rock, Paul.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone from Trenton Hood. Bill Gardner, what up, everyone? Bill, great to see you, brother.
Bill Omi Gardner, I'd like to call him.
Yeah. Morning, all. I know if Omi does tremendous, and I strongly suspect it will, Bill Gardner, I mean, how many yachts are you going to get, brother? Yeah. Michael Vick says, hello, guys. Like always, big hug, hand, purple, blue piece. For whatever reason, the little emojis don't come through on this. 12 watching, 4 likes, share and like this, and smash the like button. Perfect. Not nerves. Everything is going to be all right. Just hold and enjoy the ride. I'm really excited with what's going on. Like, things are coming together. Like, this is what it feels like when you've bottomed out and you're heading for this upside. And we're seeing all those markers. I've been through this many times because prior to crypto, I've been through this in crypto once before. But I went through it in real estate twice and in the stock market a couple times. And so this is what it feels like. And it's amazing to me because I recognize this feeling. I recognize where my emotions are at. And I'm like, this is what it feels like is things turn around to head higher. And you get some market conditions showing you that that's what's going to happen. But people are still feeling so depressed and stuff. They can't get past the beating that we've taken, right? We've taken a severe beating for 2.5 years. It's been pretty monstrous in some cases. Some of it's only been 2 years. Some of it's been 2.5. And so it'll be nice to have the opposite happen. Many of you have stuck around through that beating that we took, and you've been making smart decisions. And so this upside, you will get to experience the full power of the upside. And that's pretty exciting. All right. Yes, let's definitely look at some charts, Paul. I'm curious to see what's on your mind and what you see going on in the other markets.
So a couple of weeks back, I suggested putting a short position in on the US dollar because it had gone up a lot. And then I think last week I said, yeah, that wasn't such a good idea because it's gone up, and to stand aside because the way it was going up was just too aggressive. But I just wanted to show you this chart because it's a weekly chart of the dollar index. That was my breakout line. And so each one of these is a 1 week. and this is a bar chart, which is what I like to look at. Most people look at candles. I like bars. They're the same thing. It's whatever you like. I prefer bar charts. But anyway, this is the open, this is the close of each bar. So open the week here, close the week here, open the week here, close the week here. So the reason why I wanted to show you this is because this is a run of green bars that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So this is the 12th week of dollar strength all in a row, which is pretty unheard of. Even in a strong market, you'd expect some form of pullback. So this is why the market is starting to tip down, because the stronger the dollar gets, the worse it is for US stocks. And let me show you this another way. If we look at the dollar yen, which has been going, this has been going up, dollar yen has been going up, which means the yen has been weakening. So it's kind of the inverse. If you imagine the dollar going down, right? If the dollar was weakening, the chart would be going down. So this is the yen weakening. So the yen's been getting weaker and weaker. And if we have a look at what's been happening to the Japanese stock market, what you'll see is that the stock market, this bit ignored just for the moment, the stock market has been soaring because the currency has been weakening. And the market sees that as a cut in rates. So the weaker the currency is, the cheaper Japanese goods are, the more people buy Toyotas, the more people buy, robotics from Japan, or factories or whatever it might be. So you can understand that the currency is a really important mechanism in an economy. It makes a big difference if it weakens a lot or strengthens a lot. So now the dollar yen, which has been weakening extremely aggressively, has suddenly turned around. So this move here, we switch over to a daily chart. You see that is the first really significant bearish candle or bar. Actually, it's not a candle, it's a bar, a very bearish bar that has hit 150, big psychological number, and then come down. It's had a rebound, but now this is starting to look shaky. So it's the first major sell signal that we've had in the dollar yen. Now, it hasn't completely broken all trend lines and stuff like that, but it's enough to say, well, what was the weakest currency against the US dollar? It was the Japanese yen. The Japanese stock market has gone, oh no, dollar strength, dollar weakness is coming. Therefore, they're going to preempt the fact that Japanese stocks are not going to look as attractive. And so that's already moved down. And if we look at the Chinese renminbi, which is a very important currency, we can see that's forming potentially a head and shoulders top. So there's a couple of signs in the weakest currencies that are suggesting that things are turning. Now, if we go back to the dollar index itself, it's not broken a trend line. If we go on the daily charts, it's not broken a trend line. But what I tend to see is when you see something in the weakest currency pair, you get this echo across the other markets. We're in October, we've got non-farm payrolls coming. If something's going to happen, it's going to be a few days apart. So it wouldn't surprise me if on Friday we get a massive dollar move. And that is a knee jerk to the downside because payrolls are much weaker than expected. And it throws all this interest rate move into doubt, and could potentially cause a low in the stock market as well. So, it might sell off initially and then go back up. If we look at the chart of the Dow Jones, obviously it's been going down very aggressively. But if we take a step back, it's still well within market parameters for a bull market. So it's a correction. It's a deep correction. It's broken some support, but the highs are still potentially at a point where they're higher than the significant support levels from before. So we haven't broken into bear market territory just yet, even though it does feel pretty horrible. Now, what I've got here in terms of timing cycles is if we look at this time last year, 30th of September, we had a low, and into the 13th of October. So this gives us, if we look at a year on, to see potentially whether we get the same sort of reaction within this window. So between today, which is obviously the third, is it the third? No, it's the fourth. That was the third yesterday. So between the third and the Friday the 13th, well, that's a date you're not going to forget. Between those 2 days, dates, I should say, I'm looking for a potential reaction or some kind of low forming panic that then ends all this, ends the sell off. We get the bad news, whatever that bad news might be, and then the market starts to turn up again. Now, of course, I need to see that happening. I'm not going to just jump in, because just jumping in and trying to catch a falling knife is not a great idea. But as with that chart that we saw with the dollar yen, the way it made that really big bar, that it went up and then came back down again, that's called a spike. So if we see some form of downward spike where Dow goes down a lot, say 600 points, and then rallies back up to 200 points, down 200 points or down 100 points, that would be a really good sign that the market is feeling for a low. And I don't think anything's really changed in terms of the outlook for interest rates, and there's still important bullish stocks out there that are doing well. And once this period is over, markets will be going back up again. But nothing moves in a straight line, and the market does these things to try and shake you out, and it's fairly normal. I'll admit that my view is being tested. It's being tested quite heavily, but I still don't see any reason to change my view at this point.
Yeah. So interesting what's happening with Japan and the US. I guess was unaware of, I guess at a bigger level, how money's printed in Japan and then printed here, and sometimes at different cycles, almost like if they're coordinating. And it's interesting as you go over just what's going on a world level. I feel like I learned so much from these videos, and hope everyone there in the audience does too. Trenton brings up get into the comments, just wanted to give some attention. If Ecomi allows retailers to purchase OMI on their VV application via credit card, would that push that towards exchange status? Would they then have to comply with exchange regulations? It could. One of the factors that they could run into that is in the back of my mind, it hasn't become an issue yet, is the SEC is going after the US SEC is going after some companies that there's only one marketplace for their stuff, and saying basically their own marketplace, and that's the only marketplace for it, and that saying that they don't like that situation. They want to be able to be on multiple marketplaces. Ecomi is down the list of who they would go after for that. There's other ones that are bigger, and so we'll see if they keep pushing that line. I think there's going to be some changes at the US SEC in the coming year, little over a year, and they'll probably take some steps back. Can we talk about Gala and the lawsuits? Not much. I don't want to go into it very much. I don't know what's going on in them. I've had some red flags around Gala for a while. I no longer hold any Gala. I'm still very interested in the space. There's just too much shakiness. And they have one of the highest market caps in the space, which was already a little bit of a deterrent. But with all the lawsuits going on and other problems and poor decisions, I think that disincentivize people from coming into their ecosystem. Gala doesn't make sense to me. Bill Gardner says, got to get that yacht, boy. And Ryan says, what's up, guys? All right. So what are your thoughts on the correlation between Bitcoin and equities? And we were talking about this a little bit before we started off, that equities were doing quite well while crypto was entering its bear market. In fact, I know a number of people that left crypto to go chase the green candles in stocks. And it's funny when I see that, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm going to leave what's cheap to go chase what's already been pumping tremendously. And I see that over and over again. At some point, I'm expecting the reverse will probably happen, that crypto will be doing quite well, and people will be selling their stocks, which might be going down or just being quite boring to them, and roll them into crypto. And that's part of what creates the massive blow off top that we usually have every 4 years.
We haven't seen that sort of end of cycle panic buying in crypto as yet. And I think in equities, we have seen a very solid rally since sort of October. Um, the sorry, when was the low? Sort of March time, and then last year we had like the September October low. I mean, that's been a very decent rally, and that was all happening while crypto wasn't doing particularly well. And for me, I think one represents a pure form of speculation in terms of crypto at the moment, and at that time was a pure form of speculation. But the underlying technology is something that will change the world, and people just haven't cottoned onto it because they just don't quite understand it. So at the moment, it's in that highly speculative, short-term money chases it for a bit, and then everybody panics out. And the SBF situation, literally, I think, has put people off for many years. Now, what's interesting about that is a very similar thing happened to tech stocks, which some of you will remember, but probably most of you won't. After the first boom in tech stocks, when they collapsed, it was like, well, that's it. What were we thinking? There's obviously no future in this internet business, and all the stocks that pumped were everyone's nursing losses, and it was all, let's go back to boring companies. And it feels a lot like that about crypto right now. People know about it, they've heard about it, they've seen the boom, they think they've seen the bust, and they're just not interested. So that's a great time, because that's exactly when these technology stocks started to base and go up and form what were long-term bases that went on to multi-year bull markets. So so in terms of the correlation, I think we'll hit a point, and that point might be next year, where everything is going up together. I do think in a proper bull market, everything will synchronize, everything will move together. So we'll have stocks going up, so money goes into crypto because people have got profits there that they want to invest in more risky things, and it will self-feed into a top. At the moment, there has been a big swing up in equities that hasn't been matched by the move in crypto. And at the moment, whilst the market is getting ready for a major bull market, it will be very much a selective market. And what I mean by that is, in a bull market, say in property, think about it. If everything's in a bull market, then you can pretty much shut your eyes and you probably pick something that will go up. I mean, you're not guaranteed, but the majority of the market is going up, so you've got more chance of picking something that will go up than not. But when you're in that in-between point, people are very fussy about what they're buying, and they will be fussy because they're cautious. And so at the moment, we're seeing short-term money chasing very short-term money's cottoning on that crypto's doing actually very well, and that's sticking out. A few people are putting up charts saying, oh, gold's not done very well, but crypto has, and stocks haven't done well, but crypto has. So there's cottoning on that actually crypto has been doing well. I said last week that it was up more than anything else, and yet everybody still thinks we're in a bear market, which is strange. But equities, to be fair, have had a massive run. They've had a very decent run, and after every run, you get a pullback, and this is fine. We'll get a similar thing in crypto. It won't necessarily be the top in the next sort of few months. It will be a pullback as the market's going higher. So for the moment, I think the correlation will wax and wane. But the key to it all is US interest rates. We just need more confirmation from some good, inverted commas, good numbers, which would be sort of weak numbers, bad numbers in the economy, show that there's some pain happening in the economy, which I think the authorities want anyway, to keep the workers' costs down, which is great for companies, if people are worried about their jobs. Once we start to get some bad numbers, then they can think about taking the pressure off the economy a bit, just in time for the presidential elections next year.
Yeah, it seems like it's all setting up in place. It is interesting how people still feel like crypto is in a bear market, and a lot of that is emotional. And I was thinking when you first said that, I was just processing on it. And I was like, everyone who's been in crypto, we feel like we're still in a bear market because all the losses that we've taken. It's hard to believe that, okay, it's going to be turning around now. And so you almost get like kicked so many times while you're down, you hesitate to try to get back up. And so you feel that. But what's interesting is the people that are outside of crypto still thinking that crypto is in a bear market, because that also is emotional. And they've just kind of dismissed it in their minds for now that, oh, no, that's doing bad. And they're not looking at the actual data, because most people, we're emotional and not logical beings. Our decisions are far more emotional than we realize, because if you just look at it, the numbers are there that Bitcoin has actually done quite well and everything else hasn't. And so the turnaround is happening. And this is why so many people miss it, is because they're in their emotions, whether they're in it and they've been kicked so many times, they're, just expecting more kicks, or they're out of it and they're just dismissed it and they're not really checking it till bam, all of a sudden the gains are so massive they can't ignore them anymore. Frank asks a good question here. But if you touch on Bitcoin or Ether will be available as an option in U.S. retirement plans. I'm looking forward to that option. Probably sometime soon. It's going to be much easier when the spot ETFs are approved, because they can make it possible now. It's just still some red tape. So I don't know a date on that. It'll probably be in this coming year. And that's when a lot more money can really flow into crypto. There's two major holdbacks. Number one, corporations aren't really getting Bitcoin right now. And there's some accounting rules that had to change for that to be possible. And those accounting rules changed just barely. And secondly, so then I'm sure there's a lot of corporations that are then having the necessary meetings in order to be able to hold Bitcoin on their books. The second is spot ETFs being approved, because then actually the executives like the CEO or the CFO can then just decide to put some into an ETF without board approval. That gets done. And then thirdly is allowing regular people to be able to get in through allowing part of their retirement funds to be in Bitcoin or ETH. So my guess is that's coming in the coming year. I know Fidelity's made mention of it, that they're working on that. Probably a lot of these things will happen roughly at the same time. And that will allow massive inflows into Bitcoin and ETH. And then that will trickle through the rest of the crypto market. All right. Well, what are you seeing in the Bitcoin chart, Paul?
It's trading very nicely from a technical point of view. We were bouncing around the 25,212 level, and it had a little dip, but about as far as it had last time. So it kind of mirrored that, and then is bounced up to the 28,547 level, which it hit pretty much exactly. So these are levels from kind of way back, but they're on there because they're important. Now, I'm not claiming that this is exactly where one should go and sell and buy. I just think that this is building up in a consolidation that forms part of a longer base, that once we start to approach, or the more we approach this resistance here, it means we're going to be going, well, we're going up. The trend is up. Look, that's the trend line. So for me, I know what you're saying about the bear market, and it obviously depends where you bought, but I'm looking at this as this was a correction from a long-term long-term bull market. So this whole thing, whilst it was awful, was still a correction, which was our core view. This was bad, but we were looking for a turnaround, and we got the turnaround, and the turnaround's happening, and it's continuing to unfold. So this is part of the big bull market in the overall structure. The further you go back, the more we can see that this is part of a bull market. So this is a new leg, and it's consolidating here in the short term, and we're just waiting for a key breakout, and that has to be a break over this 31,818 to 32,000 level, and the closer it gets to it, the more chance it will have of breaking it, and it's on its way to doing that. I think it will break these levels, possibly before the end of the year, but definitely into next year. And you know, we could be heading towards this sort of the next big target. I've got 45,479 there. I haven't looked at that for a while. That must be resistance from here. So in any case, that's where I'm expecting the market to go. Whilst it's above this trend line, you know, I'm a bull, and I'm going with that as the basic structure. But short term, yeah, I like the fact that it's performing well when the rest of the market is a bit shaky. Because what you're seeing there, the term for that is accumulation. So when everybody's selling everything, it's like, well, it's not really moving. It's like prime property. You know, when people sell the stuff that they you know were highly speculative and want to get out of, prime property tends to not go down so much because there's always a lot of demand for it, and if you don't want it, someone else will. So the fact that it's not correcting like this, and we might be seeing another leg up in equities soon, I think is a really good sign. So it's building up for a nice rally.
Awesome. What are you seeing going on with ETH? ETH's been interesting because we're seeing Bitcoin do exactly what I would hope it would do. ETH has been a little bit more playful, I guess I would say.
Yeah,
A little bit less predictable.
You know, I think last year I would have put my money on ETH outperforming Bitcoin because I just thought that the market would be more speculative towards ETH as a new technology. It hasn't been the case, which it's gone up, but it's obviously not gone up as much and not as relatively strong. But it's not. Again, this is not a bear trend, and it's holding in its trend line. It's just a little bit weaker, a little bit more muted, and for the moment, I think it will just go sideways, but eventually will break higher. I do think it will follow, because I think we will. When you see a bull market, everything moves. The majors move, and then you get that rotation into the altcoins. So I doubt it will. It will go down and Bitcoin will go up because I don't think it will be that sort of market. But for the moment, it could be doing better. So we need to see a bit of life in there. This central line here, this line that comes in, it's just behind that. It's 1720, which is it always seems to play around that level. So at the moment, it's below it. I think if it crosses through, there's a short-term signal. If it closes above it, I'd look to buy it. But the 200-day moving average would possibly be quite a good. Well, it's not a bad signal to use that. 200-day, it's still going up. It's flattened off a bit, but this is triangular, which means it's compressing, which means at some point it's going to break out and we'll see a proper trend. So I don't know whether that's going to be now or whether it's going to be later, you know, further down the line where Bitcoin's running and then everyone looks around and goes, why isn't ETH gone, and starts buying that because the spreads get stretched. But I do think it will break to the upside. I think the structure is still bullish as far as I'm concerned. It's just it's not moving at this point in time.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting. I think it's compressing and probably going to blow up to the upside. I think ETH is going to do very well. I don't hold a lot of it just because I'm in the riskier stuff that do usually even better during a bear market. And that's the risk that I'm taking with those. Let's take a look at, well, let's start going through some of the altcoins. These are altcoin suggestions. If you have some suggestions for next week's video, put them in the comments on the video below, up to 2. I especially like it if you tell me what you like about them, especially if there's something I don't cover all the time. So I'm not going to be as deep on the fundamentals. The more you can share about the fundamental reasons why you like it, that helps us do a bit better analysis because we don't have time on the show to go really deep on it. Let's look first at Bepro, which is one I haven't looked at in quite a while, and I'm really liking where the price is at.
Yeah. Is this right? So I had some I got a little bit late, so I don't know if I've actually got the right one. Just looking at it here, it doesn't seem to be. So
no, it's not. It's BEPRO.
Oh, right. Actually, so it's my fault for not being able to spell. Yeah, there we go. Oh, right. Yeah, now I see what you mean. I was like, whoa, that doesn't look great when I was looking at the other chart. So this one is obviously a lot better. Look, we've got a little, what looks like a little base going on there. Let's go to 1 year. Yeah, try and have a look at a bar chart or candlestick chart. So potentially little basing patterns happening. I mean, I'd still be very cautious because it's been in quite a vicious bear market here. So highly speculative to be looking to buy it at these points because of this strong bear market. But there is definitely something going on in this base. So, you know, if I was feeling very speculative, I'd buy some just because it's making this kind of rounding base, and that's enough for a very short-term trade. Whether it ends up being a long-term trade, I just don't know. So with a very cautious amount of money, I might just sort of buy it here, see whether this move continues. But that's all I would say. There's only this to really go on in terms of anything that's bullish about it. And to be honest, you've got to be very careful still, because you see that sort of thing here, and it failed and it went back down. So I would really prefer that it showed a bit more signs of life or a major base, even if it means buying it higher up, just to be sure that it's actually turning. But there's definitely something happening there, so I can see why you'd be interested in it. So if I could say highly speculative with a small amount of money, coffee money, as you like to call it, that's how I'd approach it. Just because of this little base here, but that's all.
Okay, so you would say a tiny little buy coffee money.
Yeah, just because of this pattern.
Perfect. So here's a little bit of the history on it. And so Bepro, I can't say I know the fundamentals deeply on this one, but I did trade this. And I even covered it way back here because I liked what was going on with the technicals. And so I bought it on one of these pullbacks and took about a 3x before getting out because I didn't dare hold it longer. I didn't know enough about the fundamentals. So I made a nice little ride on this as it was pulling back after running up some. And so technically I just traded this. They give us a description of what Bepro is. Bepro network is a code as a service protocol with its own code base for gaming, DeFi, and more. A decentralized marketplace and system that connects developers with operators or anyone looking to build open source development development repositories. Manage disputes in the network, participate in it, and earn rewards by curating the system and providing development resources. That was a mouthful, and there's still another sentence here. So now you fully understand exactly what they do, right? It's actually they probably could describe it a little bit simpler. I think I know what they're talking about, but if you go to it, you can see essentially you can try to hire people to discover bug bounties and place bounties on things you want figured out and solved. And I don't know how much this is getting as far as traction, people using it yet. You can open their app and during the bear market, a lot of things that nobody's paying attention to don't get a lot of traction because nobody's paying attention to them. Like Axie Infinity, this time last bear market, was giving people Axies in order to try to encourage them to play it because nobody was playing it, because nobody's mind was on crypto except the few hardcore of us that had stuck around during the bear market and just endured. Well, you're in that place, that you're in that group that is endured, but you also have like overload, I'm sure, like we all do. And so like taking in and researching and trying to find good bets, I like where the chart is at on this. So it's not quite as cheap, but almost as cheap as it was right before the 2021 bull market. And that's cool. I hope that doesn't mean that they're failing. I don't know enough about the fundamentals to know how much cash they have, how things are going there. They should be flush on cash as they had this big bull market, probably while they had some ecosystem tokens vesting. So as long as they cash some of those in and created some big reserves, they should still have reserves, but should still have, and do they have, sometimes they're different things. So as long as they survive into this next bull run, I don't see why they don't do exceptionally well from here. So for me, it's also a small buy. Like, I really like this little base that they have and other things about it. I made some good money off this the last bull market, but that doesn't guarantee that it'll make me money this bull market. It's just at a really low market cap of under 5 million. 100% of their tokens are in circulation, so there's no more tokens to be vested and dumped on people's heads. So we will see. Yeah, I like where the price is at. For me, it's a buy. Good suggestion from one of the viewers. On that note, we'll take a look at another one that made me some money the last bull market, which is a Verasity, and this was another suggestion by a viewer.
Yeah, if I could just say very quickly
Sure.
on Bepro, because I put a better chart out really than the last one. What I like about it is this little potential head and shoulders pattern. So if it breaks this line and the trend line at the same time, that's really where the trigger is. But it looks like it's building as a very small base, which is why I was saying it was a small, potentially for me, very small speculative buy from a short-term perspective. So left shoulder, there's a head. It looks like a right shoulder's forming, so it could go sideways for a bit and then pop up. But that's quite an interesting little potential pattern there. So that's definitely worth watching. So we'll keep an eye on that. So Verasity, yeah, I mean, look at this. This was a trend line that we drew in the last time we talked about it. I think we discussed that each of the highs was getting lower. I probably would have said it was either a wait. It would have been a wait. I can't buy something like that until it breaks the trend line. But you see why I wait for the trend line to go. It's a shame that it's moved so far without us seeing it, which is why, again, even when you're not buying something that you're interested in, it's good to have a plan around what you might do. And that's why I put these tripwire triggers in. I think this was another one at 0.0057, which is, it's taken that out as well. So it's 2 buy signals have triggered for me, and it's still looking strong. So probably have a pullback because there'll be a lot of people who are long and looking to take some profits. But that's a really nice breakout. It's trading nicely from a technical point of view. Obviously, we want it to get to this 1.1 cents level and lots of resistance there. But if it takes that out, it's going to be off to the races, I think. So whilst it's performing so well, I'd expect a pullback, but it's in the buy camp. I mean, I can't fault what it's done, especially the pace of it. This is exactly what I want to see. Very sharp move. You know, could wait for a pullback before jumping in, but volume's gone up as well. So clearly some very good news has gone on there. And, you know, I'm sure there's other people who've got in it way before me and are thinking, you know, this is looking good too. So higher low as well. So there's lots of things that rally has caused that is good for the chart. See, that high, that low is a higher low plus a decent volume move. So I'd love to know what the news is, but after overall, the chart's looking good.
So would you rate this as a buy, a wait for a pullback, or?
Well, I think that you might get a pullback, but it's a buy. I mean, the tripwires for the buy have been hit. So so I am at this point a bit late into buying it. I would have liked to have bought it on a breakout of the trend line. And if fail safe would have been through this line, which is why it's there, because it was the prior resistance. So, and it's above that. But, you know, if I was buying it here, it wouldn't just be for a very short term move. It would be for a much bigger move. And therefore, I think there's more in the tank. So I would still rate it a buy. I mean, I couldn't sell it here. There's no technical pattern as yet. So yeah, for me, it's a buy.
Awesome. So this is what I'm looking at. So their market cap is now 67 million. Now, as much as it seems like crap, I totally missed out on this. It has only doubled from where it was at. It was a lot cheaper in December, and December was quite low, and December was possibly the bottom for most of the crypto market last December. And we're past that, and it did come down another nice dip here, and then it is rocketed up. And so I actually called this a buy down here, and this is why I sometimes buy down there. And now it's risky. It could have broken to the downside, and sometimes it breaks the upside. But my methodology that I use is fundamental research, which tells me what zones I'm happy enough in. And so at that price, I was happy enough with it. Now, what does Verasity do? Well, here's their website. And essentially, they're working on this idea called proof of view. So when you're paying for advertising and you think about how much revenues content creators make and other things, the reason why they can make so much revenue. So if you have a YouTube channel or you have a TikTok and you have millions of people viewing every one of your videos, the reason they make so much money is because there are people watching ads. But how do you prove that those are real people versus ads? Well, cryptocurrency allows, and blockchain, so cryptographical encryption and blockchain allows them to, I guess, prove that people are real versus just bot logins and, one person creating 400 or 500 bots. And the technology is going that way, that you can like prove that you're you without actually giving your identity. And Veracity is creating some ways to create a proof of you. Now, it's a concept that isn't really proven will work yet, in my opinion, but I think it's a concept that the marketplace is going to be interested in, because as we get further down the road, people are going to want to make sure their ads are going in front of real people rather than just open browsers. So I like where they're going. It's a narrative that I can understand. They really have never had a problem getting their own group of people interested, or their own community interested in their project. I hear people talk about Veracity all the time. So that tells me they have a decently strong community, even through a bear market. So I think this one's ripe. Is it as good as it was before? No, I would still rate it a buy. I just wouldn't load, when it just doubled. I don't load the boats at that. But can it go up from here? Oh, I think over the bear market, it's going to go up massively from here, is my guess. And so as much as it feels like you already missed out on a little bit of it, you have. And that's okay. There's a lot of people that don't buy until they've always missed out on some, so that they can confirm that the bottom's already in, because with their methodology, they never try to catch a falling knife, and they never try to buy the bottom. They wait till they've got confirmation that it's already turned around. Let me check. VRA pump because of the supply burn. Well, that makes sense. And if that's the news that really pumped it, then probably there will be a correction, and it'll get more attractive again. Great question from King Claw. When will WanChain show its true worth? I've been thinking about this. WanChain is one of the projects during the bear market I feel like has done the most amount of work and progressed where their technology is at further than almost everything I see in the bear market. And their token price really hasn't gotten credit for that yet. But the market pays you according to the value you bring to the table. And I feel like they've been bringing a lot of value to the table. So at some point that will become recognized. All right. VRA also listed on a new Asian exchange recently. That makes sense. Asia is going crazy with crypto right now. So we're seeing less of it in the Western Hemisphere. And so the Far East, or Asia, has been actually picking up a lot of steam on crypto. But because most of us don't speak Mandarin and Japanese and Vietnamese, often we're just unaware and don't have our fingers on the pulse at how strong it is there. but I know some people over there, and that's what they've been telling me, that it's becoming far hotter there than it is everywhere else. All right. Our next one we want to look at is Rio.
Yeah, so I don't know if you know a lot about this one. I don't. I'm not sure if we've looked at it before. I mean, this is trying to base very, very small base, but it has been in quite a severe bear market. So I would say for me, it's a wait. I need a bit more evidence. See, we've got this fanning downward trend line, and I'm not even sure if these are real prices. So it looks like it's not very actively, well, it could be quite actively traded, but it might be still influenced by a small amount of holders, perhaps token vesting or what have you. So that obviously with technical analysis, what you're looking at is kind of group psychology and no individual person affecting the market. So when you get to thinner and thinner markets, it's you can't apply psychological techniques on that, because how predictable an individual person is very difficult to say. But on groups, on mass groups of psychology, you can pretty much guess what the average is going to do, and that's what makes it predictable. So with that in mind, with a very thin market, it is attempting to form some form of base, but that's very, very small compared to the level of the bear market that we've seen. So at the very least, for me, I'd have to wait for one of these fanning downward trend lines to break. And even the most extreme one still hasn't broken as yet, which is this one here. That's the current one. Then we've got this one that comes next, and then this one here, and then the major one all the way up there. So it has a lot of work to do. Now, it might be that whilst it's going sideways, or if it has a blow off down and then move back up again, it forms some form of base, a technical basing pattern, which would then allow me to say that or allow me to buy it, because it would confirm that it's got a foothold and things are turning around. But until at least this trend line here breaks, for me, it's definitely a wait. I'd say possibly a sell, but not really. I think I would just wait on this.
Okay, so for Paul, it's a wait. And for me, it's a wait too. Now, my background is in real estate, and that's what this one is all about.
Oh, is it really?
Yes, and I like the space they're going into, but it's such a regulated market that it's a challenge that a smaller player like this is going to be able to make that happen. So I've seen some companies come in, and the idea of tokenized real estate is a fantastic idea. The regulatory hurdles to make that happen are huge, because you're going to get deemed a security when you package a bunch of real estate and you sell it off through things. And so in order to get something like this through, and this is the downside of regulation, is the stronger the regulators get, the more they kind of get in bed with the biggest companies, and it shuts out the little guy, because the little guy just doesn't have the clout, doesn't have the money to make things happen, even if their ideas are the very best. So it's not like we don't need regulation. We do. Regulation gives clarity, and what the market needs is clarity and guidelines. And so usually in an attempt to provide that, regulators get put in place, and often as the regulators get bigger, their incentives are not to let people take risks and see how they work out. The regulators like the sure bets, and the sure bets in their opinion are the really big players. So little players like this get boxed out. Now that doesn't mean that their market cap can't pump from the 1.6 million that it's at and go considerably higher in a bear market. They could. It's just risky. In my opinion, very risky. Now they're up considerably from what they're at. So they're up 25x since December, which is crazy up. That means they were extremely low and people probably thought they were going to die. But here is their website, right? So the future of private equity is digital, and they're not wrong on that. The question is, Are they big enough to make this happen? I don't think they are. Let's see, team. The CEO, Derek, I don't know how to say that. Derek is an entrepreneur with institutional experience in commercial real estate development, EB5 capital investments, and blockchain-based investing. I would want to be seeing something like former head of Goldman Sachs real estate division or something, right? To be able to have the power to get regulators on board with this, because there's probably laws that have to change. Definitely getting the regulators on board has to happen. And a company in this position having the power, the weight to do that, there's too much regulation, which becomes a hurdle, which means only the big players can get things through in an environment this regulated. So for me, it's a wait, especially since they're up 25x. In fact, if I had bought back then, I would actually be taking some profits out and then seeing if they get cheaper again. And then it's not like it's not a bad risky play. Like, it's a very risky play, and it's not like it's a bad coffee money play. I just want to see it get cheaper again before I would put coffee money into this, because that's coffee money I could be putting into other ones that haven't pumped 25x since December. All right.
So are they looking to tokenize commercial and private real estate, or is it just one or the other? Do you know?
Seems like at least commercial real estate. Let's see if the products page tells us. A layer one multi-chain Web3 ecosystem focused on the issuance and management of digitally native real-world assets. So their idea isn't wrong. Their narrative is right. I'm just blocked on the part of, do they have the backing and the strength to pull this off? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they do. I'm just not seeing it. And so I'm just having to take guesses. And I will take bets like this, because something like this from the bottom of the bear market into the bull market can do considerably well, even if they don't survive long term, even if they aren't the ones to make it happen. But it is a riskier bet, and they've already pumped 25x. That's why my reasoning is where it is. I will take bets like this, but only when their token is really, really cheap. And it's no longer as cheap. I mean, it's not like $1.6 million market cap isn't cheap, but for the risk associated with this, I would rather see the market cap at 200,000 if I'm going to be putting 10 or 20 or 100, $200 into it. All right, so super chat from Bill Gardner, which is a great way to get our full attention priority. So Bill Gardner says, more OMI. Yes, please. And that is next up on our list. So let's jump over to OMI.
Yeah, OMI. I might ask Bill what he thinks rather than what I think, because he's called it better than me for sure. But technically, it has been doing very well. We got let's just get the chart sorted out. So we're on an hour chart here. Let me just get into the daily chart. So yeah, left shoulder head. This was the basing pattern where we got the buy signal here. Break of the trend line, break of the base. We've got the first sharp move up to resistance. It's come back down again. We were looking for this to start to turn around again to form a inverse head and shoulders, which seems to be on track. So it's actually doing okay. So it's still a buy, and it's still forming this base. It may take a little longer, because that was quite a long time it took to form the left shoulder. And in terms of forming the right shoulder, it looks like it's ready to go. Now that is a good sign. That does happen sometimes when the market gets very bullish and you get eager buying ahead of the completion of a pattern. And so the right shoulder completes quicker than the left shoulder. So if we look at the time scales between how long the left shoulder took compared to the right shoulder, if it keeps going straight up here, it would be much quicker. But yeah, it's still looking interesting. That pattern's forming, and once this forms, it will have completed a major base. So it's gone from a minor base to a major base. It hasn't completed it yet, but it's on the road to doing it. And then once it completes or goes through this slightly inclined line, so depending on when it happens or if it happens, you know, we can't say exactly what the price would be, but approximately 0.0013 or thereabouts. Once it breaks through that, that will complete the base. So looking good. So it's still positive. Where for me, I think I would get concerned about it, because I always like to have a plan if things don't go the way I expect. I think the 200-day moving average is a good place to be thinking about, you know, bailing out, or break back below the breakout signal, which was here. So overall, whilst it's above those two levels, I'm quite comfortable with the long side for me. But yeah, so but I'm more interested in this completing as a long-term base, this head and shoulders. I mean, I've seen these happen where, you know, it goes like textbook base and it all kicks off, and sometimes it doesn't work. But that's the thing about markets. Nothing works 100% of the time. It's just a probability thing. But at the moment, it seems to be working very well.
Yes. Now, this is also a buy for me, and I happened to buy more this morning, though I'm very disappointed in OMI's price performance. I wish it wouldn't go up yet, because I still want to load up a lot more on it. So unfortunately, it's gone up to, it's been essentially forming this other shoulder of this inverse head and shoulders, and I'm hoping it comes back down here. So I bought a little bit the other day, and I freed up some more liquidity, and so I just put a little bit in today. And like I've said, anything below 0.001, or as I think of it, 0.1 cents, is a fantastic price, and still below 0.1 cents. Though for a while it was quite a ways below 0.1 cents, and I was loving this zone down here, just loving it, and I wished it could have stayed here for forever. I just knew it wouldn't stay there for forever. So here we are.
Not quite forever. You wouldn't want it to stay there forever, would you?
Not
You'd want it
forever, ever. But like, I'm like, hey, if I could have 6 more months of this, I would not cry at all. I would
Wow.
be happy, because then I could just keep dollar cost averaging into more, because I would like to hold 20 times more OMI than I have, and I have a lot already. So there's a chance I get some liquidity freed up in a big way in a couple months. And if it does come out like I hope it does, I will probably sizably increase my OMI position much more than I have. Because this is one of my favorites, the risk versus return. So I'm always gauging, okay, what do I know about the fundamentals? What do I feel like the risks are? What do I feel like the potential returns? And I'm making my guesses, and they are just educated guesses, but they're guesses. They're not true predictions. I don't know the future. I don't have a magic crystal ball that works. I'm just making strategic bets. That's where I feel like the odds are massively in my favor, where yes, it could go to zero, but I feel like the chances are low that that happens, or lower that that happens. And that if I'm right and this does well, that it does really well. And so those are the bets that I look for to take. And OMI is my favorite one for this market, on my personal opinion, on best risk versus return for my own portfolio and the risk levels that I like. So yeah, great suggestion, Bill. Thank you for the super chat. OMI, I am definitely there with you. And we see Bill in every video I'm on talking about OMI. Bill probably has logged more fundamental research than 99% of the people out there. So Bill has followed Ecomi and Vivi deeply and knows exactly what's going on there, and as excited as I am about it too. All right, let's look at the next one, which is NTX.
Yeah, NTX, sharp rally, correction, rally, correction. It's hovering close to very significant support. So from what I can see, this I like. I like the fact that we've had a sharp move and it's in a consolidation, because things go in waves. That's the bullish wave, correction. We should get another bullish wave. But until that train starts to move, I would wait, because this has been quite a correction, and it's gone on for quite a long time. Now I think it will turn around because I think if this was going to be false, it would have come all the way back down, and it hasn't done that. It's gone up and it's retraced by eye about 50% of the move, which is in a bull market where you'd be looking for a buy zone. It's just that it's come back to test it again. So um, if I was again putting a speculative hat on, I might buy some here just because this is good support and it's near good support. And if it goes anywhere near breaking it, then I'd just quickly bail out and then look to rebuy it if it gets back over it. So that would be my short-term trader's hat put on. But I suspect, rather than looking at say a 1 week trade or a couple of weeks trade, people are more interested in the longer term. And I think for the longer term, I'd have to just wait a bit longer just to see if there's a bit of life in there, and to confirm that this is support and for it to break this small pattern of falling highs. We've also got a high here and a high here that's declining. I'm going to say that spike doesn't exist and it was just a bad price. But it's not clear really whether that is or not. But we've got some descending highs that I would prefer to have taken out before we get before I sort of put bullish positions on it and start to look for a more major move. So it's got a bit of work to do before we do that. So for the moment, I think my summary would be that I would wait because it is a very speculative buy for me to buy it here. Even though I think as a strategy I could do that, I'd rather wait for something that looks a bit clearer and a little bit more clear cut. But it's not that I don't like it. I just think we need to wait.
Yeah, I like where it's at here. Like Paul's chart was showing, a very good chart showing that it might. Wow, this is why it's so hard to try to use Coin Market Cap for this stuff. Let me go over to NTX on this. Now, I like NewNet. Let's see what's going to give us possibly some of the best range. So I love the lower trend line, but I do recognize it could break to the downside of this and get a lot cheaper. So, but I often on projects that I like will buy this lower trend line and just realizing if it breaks low, then I want to buy more. And so NewNet is one I've liked for a long time. I did sell my entire position when it did really well. So I've been looking to re-enter it. And this is a coffee money buy zone for me where I just put like coffee money or a little bit more. And I actually hope that it breaks to the downside. What's interesting about NewNet is it runs when the AI narrative runs. And that's why it ran up in January as everyone went crazy for AI. There's not a lot that people can invest in that's truly AI. Bunch of scam coins came out around that time that aren't substantive and they pumped and then they just got dumped because they were just scams. When some narrative pops off, you'll see like all kinds of like AI this and AI that come out. I don't chase those. I don't try to like buy them and flip them really high. But I do look at things that get impacted by that narrative running. And that's NewNet. But it was so hyped, the narrative was so hot, and still what was seeming a bear market. That's why I took all my profits out. And smart that I did because it's come down considerably. I rolled those into other things that were way down during that time period that have gone up. So I leveraged the gains there to make even more gains. But I am looking to re-enter the position. So hopefully like some coffee money here and hopefully it breaks the downside and I can get in for really cheap because very few people are talking about AI right now and AI is out of the narrative. I like that. Now is NewNet an AI company? Only partially, not really. So if you see here, a global economy for decentralized computing. So it's really more about decentralized computing, not so much AI, but it does run with the AI narrative. And so, cool. All right. that's all that we have. Let me check the comments. We might have a chance. I did want to, because Bump, there was comment about Bump. So let's go ahead and address that. They are a strategic partner of the channel. And I see a lot of people wondering this kind of stuff. Like Stefan asked, Bump is live now, but nobody is using it to protect or earn. Why is that? So it's not true that nobody is using it, but the bigger point that you're really probably getting at is you were hoping for far more usage right now. Remember last bear market, and I'll tell you that like Axie Infinity was literally giving people teams of Axies in order to play. Nobody knew who Axie Infinity was, and they were getting on Discord channels that were talking about blockchain gaming and other things, and literally just giving people things to play because they were trying to get some traction. Because the truth is, nobody is using hardly anything in the bear market. Now, OMI and VV is an exception. VV gets quite a lot of traction for the bear market, but that is really, really rare. Most companies are not profitable right now, and there isn't a lot of people using this stuff. So I'm not surprised by the usage they have versus what I would love for them to have. But I'm also not dissuaded, because I've seen that with companies that later did big things like Axie Infinity. And so I'll get a lot more concerned if we get into the bull market and things are going crazy and DeFi starts going crazy and then nobody's using it. I think a lot of people just aren't aware of it. Bumper L2 migration, your view, Rain, like I haven't heard any specific announcements on that, but maybe they've announced it. I know that's on their plan, and their roadmap is to move over to layer 2. And last time I talked to them a few weeks ago, they told me a few that they were looking at, but hadn't decided on which one. Maybe they have now, but that is part of their plan. Is it was always best to build on ETH because that's where the most amount of money in DeFi is. But it's not a good long-term solution because transaction costs are higher there. So they want to evaluate which layer 2 is really having the most liquidity on it, and then focus on building that one out first. So great questions, everyone. Irv and I don't know the question of this, and maybe somebody that's done super chats before has seen this before. Irv keep saying to edit message when I try to super chat. Any idea why? I don't know the answer to that.
Is that a YouTube thing? Was it
Yeah,
streaming? Right.
it's a YouTube thing, and why it's doing that to him on YouTube, I'm not sure. Let's see. I think, well, with where we're at today, let's see. Maybe we have a minute to get into a few more picks. Irv who's getting the Louis shoes? Are those Louis Vuitton shoes that are like maybe come with digitals? I heard something about a high-end brand making like shoes that you also get some metaverse shoes with it, but I can't say I know what the specifics are. So that would be interesting because it's possible that the NFT you can sell for as much as you paid for the real life shoes. Sometimes that happens. And so if you get Louis Vuitton shoes for free, you might as well, by then like turning around selling the NFT, keeping the real life shoes. Or you could speculate that the NFT will be worth something in the future. I'd say that's speculative. It might happen in a big way, but it depends on what metaverse it's in and how much traction that metaverse gets. Oh, there. Okay, so this came through. Ontology. I have not heard Ontology in a long time. Let's take a look at Ontology.
What do they do?
So this is back in the day when there were some fights over, or just some different ideas vying for control on whether one of the biggest chains that really emerged out of the 2017 bear market was Ant Shares, which then rebranded as Neo. And essentially, they would pay you gas for holding the Neo token. So you would get gas. And then Ontology was built by some of the same developers. So what's funny is during the 2018, Ontology was doing an airdrop, and I didn't take the 30 minutes it would have taken to sign up for the airdrop. And they airdropped you 1,000 tokens, and the tokens then, like 2 months later, went to $10. And I was like, oh my gosh, why did I not sign up for that airdrop? However, down the road, it's played out that Neo has not done that well in Ontology. They just haven't kept pace. Like back then, their competitive advantage was that ETH was really expensive, which is true. ETH had slower transaction speeds, which is true, than say Neo in Ontology. But we've just seen Neo, like it wasn't too long after that China outlawed blockchain development, and you weren't supposed to hold crypto. And though a lot of people did, it really stalled out development on Neo and Ontology and really, really hurt them. Now, China is opening back up to that, so maybe these can come back to life, but that did really hurt their price. And you can see that their token price is way, way down after being at, it doesn't even show this going to $10, but there it does, did go to over $10. And I didn't participate in that airdrop, which was silly of me. And now it's all the way down at 17 cents. So I haven't thought about this one in forever. I might, no, I don't hold any anymore. Yeah. I'm not sure. I just don't know that their narrative can get enough traction. Maybe that's wrong. I would really have to know Mandarin and be more in touch with what's happening in China and Asia to know if I think it's going to do well. So, and you get a free comic. Is this with the Louis Vuitton? Is that what you're talking about? I'm not quite sure what that refers to. All right. For me, that's not a buy. At best, it's a wait. What are your thoughts, Paul?
So this is interesting. If it's going to form a base, this would be a good area for it to do it. The line that I find the most important is this one. See, we've got these falling highs that are just coming down like this. You've got this straight line here that marks them all out, which is making this gap that needs to be filled here for the chart to look balanced. So if we take that as the center, what's happened on the left should happen on the right for it to look bullish. So it's got to come into this area here. So that's what I'm saying. It's got to break into this area for me to want to, think about this being a base. Now, until it does that, the pressure is still downwards. So, and it's bouncing sort of towards a point where something's got to happen. It's either going to break this low, which is its very, very good support, but close to it, or it's going to trigger through this resistance line. And I don't know which is going to happen. So I'd have to wait. But it's getting to a really crucial point where it's got to break out. So I think it's definitely worth watching. It's timely that you've suggested it. And I think on whatever charting system you've got, I put some alert levels around or close to these points, so we can see whether it holds or breaks either one to give a direction. If it does go up and take this level out, then this would be a really nice base, but it is very much contingent on it taking this resistance level, breaking through it and forming or getting close to what would be the ultimate trigger line. And if it breaks this trigger line, that is actually the start of the bull market, believe it or not. So that's what it would be anyway, from a technical perspective. So yeah, really interesting one. But I share your sort of indecision about the short term, because it's a very interesting point. It's a very interesting point technically. Really good support there, but it's being forced down into it, if you like. So so we need to see which one it breaks. Let the market decide.
Yeah. I haven't thought about Neo and ontology in a while, and so I'm glad you suggested it. And looking at Paul's analysis, that is a really good base. So maybe I'm going to bump it up a little bit more in my mind because money is coming back into the Asian market. So ontology could do very well. I mean, it's retraced 98.5% from its highs, and I love those kind of retracements. Also, let's look at how much is in circulation, the total supply and the max supply. It looks like 87% is in circulation. So most of their tokens have vested. So yeah, it's down tremendously, and it could pop. So maybe this makes a comeback. I think it really hurt when China made that decision because this is mostly an Asian market and chain, as is Neo. I think I still have a little bit of Neo on a Neo wallet and stuff. And maybe I do have some ontology on there too. And what is cool is they just sit there accumulating gas, right? So maybe I have a whole bunch of gas, like 4 years worth of gas that's just accumulated there.
So
All right.
with regard to tokens in circulation, from
Yeah.
your fundamental perspective, do you have a certain amount of time where you would expect all the tokens to be in circulation? So, for example, what we might find is for a lot of new projects that started, say, 3 or 5 years ago, or maybe 2 years ago, should all of their tokens be in circulation? And if they're not, is that a sign that they should be, or does it
So
show?
every
Is it?
company will determine what their vesting schedule is back when they're planning out their token and what the max supply is going to be and how soon or how slow they'll come into the market. So usually it doesn't happen any sooner than 2 years, which would be really, really fast and crush the price because so many tokens would come into circulation. More responsible projects will have it come in more measured and they'll have holdbacks. Like the team won't get any of their tokens for 2 years because what sometimes happens is the team gets a whole bunch of their tokens, as the bear market takes off and all the team members become worth $100 million a piece. They've never had that kind of money before, so they literally just stop working. So it's important that those incentives get set up right, that the team and that the ecosystem gets the right amount of tokens at the right time. So a lot of that is a planned, scheduled system. It's not that schedule can't be changed, but it hurts the integrity of the project if they're playing around with those numbers in ways that don't make sense. So your good projects usually keep to that schedule. So that's why you'll see sometimes a project be in 4 years in and still only 50% of their tokens are vested because that was part of the plan from the beginning. And then you'll see projects like Cardano that will continue like staking rewards. So they won't have 100% of their tokens in circulation because those staking rewards that come in every single month. And so you'll see the total supply or circulating supply is 35 billion and the max supply is 45 billion. And that's because there's staking rewards that happen every month.
Right. I just wondered if you had a set sort of like a this is too long or this is too quick, or and that answers it.
I do prefer to see like 6 to 20 years or longer before all of it's there. But once all of it's there and available, it doesn't mean that the team has even sold their tokens they have. They might be holding on to them, but they've had the ability to sell them. It's because when things become unlocked, whereas they were locked before, if they're going to sell it right away to get money, they usually have. And so if they've chosen just to hold it, well, then that's a good sign that they're not going to dump it at a price that's low. And so what I'm concerned about is that vesting schedule has often punished me as an investor because I didn't understand how the vesting schedule can cause the price to fall even more, especially during a bear market. So everything that's come out during the last 2 years will have this vesting schedule. So not only do we have the normal price going down because of the bear market, But on top of that, the price is going down further because the vesting that happens, and you're seeing a lot of those tokens come into circulation, whether it's to the team or the ecosystem, and they're selling those tokens, which further price pressure down, which if I'm not already holding it, I'm quite excited about that price pressure driving the price down. So I'm able to buy it even cheaper because it's going too cheap because there's all this token vesting pressure that's pushing it down too cheap. And as that token vesting pressure goes away and we come back into a bull market, then sometimes it swings massively to the upside. But it is hard in order to really know what the vesting schedule is for that. You have to get a hold of their white paper or sometimes their tokenomics paper. Sometimes they're very public about exactly when that vesting happens. Sometimes they don't release to the public what the vesting schedule is. And so you have to do some real digging to see if you can get a hold of that if you're going to look at an individual project really deep.
Interesting, because I was thinking you could view it as a positive and a negative as to how much has been invested. If it's all been vested, you know that nothing more is coming.
Yeah.
But if it hasn't, then it could also be viewed that tokens are being held because they believe that the project's a good one and they don't want to sell them. So that's why I asked the question as to how you viewed it fundamentally. But that's interesting.
Like a big one that people got to experience since this channel launched was OMI and their vesting pressure over time, because now essentially most their tokens are really in circulation, whether they're counted as in circulation or not. For the most part, there's some holdbacks, but they're pretty much really all vested. That wasn't the case for a while because when they launched, I remember reading through their token paper, and they were really responsible, and they were holding back some of their team tokens for 2 and 3 years before their team got any of the tokens, their early team members and the founders and stuff. And they were holding back a lot of their ecosystem tokens. Well, 2 or 3 years meant like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, their tokens were starting to vest. And unfortunately, when they switched over from Go chain to Immutable X, it erased some of the token history here. So we're not able to see on this how it created additional price pressure in addition to the bear market. That token vesting on top of it pushed the price down further than it probably otherwise would have been. So, but now most of those tokens are all vested. And so prices hit probably a lot cheaper than it ever should have, but it did, which created a nice buy zone that people like me that felt like it was undervalued made massive pickups, and then I'm going to hold it. And when, I'll take profits as it starts doing really, really well. All right. Let's look at, I don't know anything about EVDC. The electric vehicle. Like I don't like what you've said about it already. Number one, it looks like they do at least have their news on here, though there's not a chart on it. So the idea is good. It's a little too catchy and trendy, and kind of like the real estate ones. The real estate ones are like, oh yes, we're going to tokenize real estate, which sounds great. And they're usually able to raise a lot of money from just new people to the space who are like, yes, this is going to happen. They don't realize the team's strength, like something like that takes massive regulatory push through, and that you need a like stellar team, like somebody who was the JP Morgan or Chase Bank CEO or something big like that, to really have the connections, not just with the regulators, but with the automakers. And so you need a giant of a person as far as development and connections to get something like that through. And the same would be true about this. And so my guess is they do not have this giant of a team that can make something happen in this. And so then so when I evaluate this, like they probably don't have the strength to make this happen. it's not like I'll never buy it, but I realize it then relies on what's called the greater fool theory, which is not what I like to do, which is, okay, if I'm buying it, it's because I think it's really low and later the price will pump because other people that don't know what they're doing will FOMO into it. I prefer to hold assets that I feel like have true long-term value. That's not to say I never buy assets based on the greater fool theory. I just rarely buy them. And so if it's clear to me that it's really cheap and it might pump in the future because this narrative will come back in and people will be talking about it, sometimes I'll buy it, but I feel a little bit weird when I do it. I like delving into things that have real value because there's so much in the space that has real value. I only play around with this with truly play money. So for me, it's a pass on this. The chart is weird, but it is.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut in.
No.
I was just reading the details about the about EVDC, and this is not very well written at all, which is a bit of a worry. I would have thought as a sort of marketing document there'd be something better. I mean, it might just be that whoever wrote it is very smart in another language and it hasn't sort of taken the time to explain it properly. So it could be a great project. I mean, it's way too early. We haven't got enough chart history, but I would have expected this to be better written and better explained for a good project. There's a few worrying sort of phrases in there that sound very kind of broad and expansive without any detail. So if you read it, you may agree, you may disagree, but that was my take on it. So and that's not a charting one, but that worries me slightly. But if the price goes up, for me, that's the most important thing, really. But yeah, that's a bit of a red flag.
Yeah, definitely a red flag because it's about the strength of the team. And remember, it takes a giant of a team to get something like that done. So Campster said that the full Ecomi price history is on CoinGecko, which he's right about, which is nice because then we can better talk about like what happened here. So right about this decision point here where it might break to the upside or to the downside, there was some more team unlocks and other things. And you can see that was probably enough to push it to the downside, which then came down. And I remember this decision point, and I did put several thousands, maybe even $5,000 or $10,000 more in at this point because I'm big on OMI for the long term. I didn't know which way it would break. Obviously, had I known it would come way, way down here, I would have just held it. But sometimes you don't know. And it did come way down here. So I loaded up on this. But this is part of the reason it broke to the downside was the token vesting to the team happened right around this time. So they were massively up because they had their tokens from a very, very cheap price. So they might be 100x up from whatever value they were assigned. Say it's like, oh, we're going to give you $10,000 worth of tokens back before they launched it. Well, that $10,000 worth of tokens might be worth like 500,000 at this price. And it'd be no surprise that they were then selling them. Say you worked as a secretary, you worked as a programmer, and all of a sudden you got all those tokens unlocked. You would sell them and be like, great. And so it came back down for this really, really nice dip. But now most of those tokens have been unlocked to everybody. So the founders still have their tokens. I'm not aware that the two founders have sold any of their tokens. They have like 30 billion a piece, if I'm not wrong on that, and they haven't sold them. And so they have been unlocked though. So if they were planning to sell them, they probably would have sold them around here. But they're continuing to hold them because they believe in the future of OMI just like I do. All right. Cool, everyone. That's all for this week. I've got another meeting to get to. Paul, you've been very gracious with your time. Thank you for sharing your time with us.
Always a pleasure. Really enjoy it. Thanks for the picks, guys. And yeah, look forward to next week.
Yes. Thank you for joining us, Paul. All right. The crypto market has likely bottomed, and we're seeing how this plays out. Maybe we get really lucky, it comes back down one more time. I don't think from here it will. Good decisions made during these pullbacks lead to life-changing ones when the market turns around, and that is going to come. Take the Zero to Crypto Hero course. The link is in the description below to help align your thinking correctly. These principles, when applied, will save you and make you 100x over the investment in the course. There is still a few codes for the discount. Now, with this course, once the discount sells out, I am going to increase the price. Not only will the code go away, but as we roll into the bull market, I am going to increase the price of the course. And I priced it really, really low on purpose because I wanted everyone to have the ability to have access to the course at a price that in any country they could make it possible. There's a downside to pricing it low, is that people value it according to the sacrifice they had to put into it. And so the downside to me pricing it really, really low is that people get less out of it because the sacrifice they had to pay was less, so they don't take it as serious. And that is a downside. And that is why I am going to increase the price after all those Rainmaker codes get used up, is because I want people to realize how important this is. That we have this window of time. Like, I've waited my whole life to be in position for something like this. And many of you are here. What I like about being in position for crypto versus everything else is your initial capital investment. You don't have to have millions of dollars put in to make good money. Though I put in as much as I could without missing a rent or a mortgage payment, but literally down to the penny during the last bear market. Literally, sometimes I would only end up having a few dollars in my account after I paid all the bills, because I didn't want to use money I needed for bills, because I needed to be able to be patient and let it play out. But I did spend everything on that. I cut back what I was doing eating out. I cut back like other enjoyment things to throw in as much as I could, and it had life-changing gains for me in one cycle, and this next cycle is going to be even bigger. So it'll be lifestyle-changing gains in this next cycle, and that will be fun too. And we're going to see that with some of you. Some of you will probably have life-changing gains. Maybe even a few of you that took this bear market super serious might even have some lifestyle-changing gains. Though I don't recommend you're buying Ferraris and Lamborghinis till your net worth is in the 10 million plus, and maybe even higher than that. Yeah, Harris clarifying here. David and Dan both have 30 billion each, and it's still on Go Chain. Exactly. All right, everyone, you know what this wrap is all about. Enjoy this wrap. Just a fun way to cap things off and reinforce these principles. See you soon.
Came into this space chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, right before you could, was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss, cause I always make the time in mind. I stick the one out cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I'll sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, but time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, say the haters be cracking. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Amazing time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.